forward-looking statements. That's what explorations do. We always look forward, so we look backwards sometimes, as you'll see this in this presentation. The share structure, very rapidly, 155 million shares outstanding, but very tightly held. We have 19.9% held by Agnico Eagle, very recent investor in our stock last December. And then we had JP Morgan as well take 9.9% of our stock last, I think it was basically end of May. And so we went from last year having about $800,000 in the bank to this year having about $14 million in the bank. Last year, no hope in doing a sizable drill program. This year, we've just recently announced a 50,000 meter drill program. Last year, we had about no interest in our company, and this year, well, we have several senior investors and strategic alliance people. And throughout this presentation, I'm going to present to you why I think we're going to deliver on 3 important projects that we think might become the next mines in the Abitibi. And to do that, I'll run you through some of the basics behind our strategy, our exploration strategy. We explore exclusively in the Quebec portion of the Abitibi Greenstone Belt. And on this slide, I want to take some time to present 2 basic concepts. Right here, you have the Eleonore discovery, discovered by Virginia in 2002, sold to Goldcorp in 2006, and finally in production in 2016. So that's the time frame, 2002 to 2016 for that solo red dot up here in northern Quebec. Very large deposit, high grade, and has to be so because it's a remote, all right? We call that frontier exploration. In the Abitibi, and I haven't even shown the red dots in the Ontario side, but in the Abitibi, Quebec portion, well, you've had all these deposits here. Detour, Casa Berardi, Bracemac, Bachelor, Narstar, Canadian Malartic, et cetera, et cetera. The difference here is that not one of those red dots was a new discovery. Not one. They were all discoveries that had been made in 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 80s, and that had been shelved or forgotten for a whole bunch of reasons. Low metal prices, companies that would leave the district to go somewhere else, all right? So not one of them was a new discovery. We call that Renaissance exploration. So in the same time frame as Eleonore, from 2002 to 2016, you had large deposits, low grade. You had small deposits, high grade. You had deposits discovered and delineated by junior companies and senior companies. All of that in the Abitibi Greenstone Belt. And the advantage here is that you have access to, or you're proximal to, infrastructure and qualified workforce. And it's an area that's steep in mining culture and it has a great amount of social acceptability. So that's why we chose in the most recent times to focus in that area and acquire projects that had meat on the bone, that had ounces in the ground. And I'll present those 3 projects. So this slide is simply a slide that illustrates where we positioned ourselves. We then found out that in the most recent times, and that's when Agnico got interested in us, that we were in the heart of the Val-d'Or mining camp with the Chimo mine project, and that we ended up being in the heart of this new major area play that is Cisco State. You can see here, this is the Windfall project, that they've got about 400,000 meters of diamond drilling in there, and I'm going to be presenting Wilson and Benoit. Why did they stake this? Well, basically, that was the last frontier in the Abitibi that was unstaked. They could not stake ground from Rouyn and Val-d'Or because that's high rent district. They could not stake ground along the Casa Berardi or the Detour because you might have seen that Darren, that's basically what we call the Balmoral Trends. And so this was the last frontier. And we wound up with 2 projects that were in there. Next slide. Well, you might think that they own a monopoly there, but that's not the case. In this next slide, I simply show an illustration of what they own, the land that's in orange. And you see that there is quite a healthy competition. You can see competing juniors such as Metnor, Beaufield, Bonterra, Probe, and Kirkland Lake Gold's in there. And our properties, Wilson and Benoit, are indoor green. They've also announced that by 2020 they want to put this part of the ground into production, and they're going to build a mill in this town. This is the highway that leads to Chibougamau, and this area is full of access roads. It makes more sense for them to bring the ore from here to there than to take 400 workers from here to there. And so by virtue of that, our project has a very excellent location. What controls the mineralization in that part of the world is the fact that these east-west trending belts, greenstone belts, are cross-cut by two very old faults, and that's where the deposits cluster. So we have an advantageous position in those two belts. So without further ado, I'll start by presenting Wilson, Benoit, and I'll finish with the Chimo mine. And this is the schedule of drilling for those three projects. We're currently drilling on Wilson. By the end of the week, I think we'll have finished on the project, then we'll bring the machine to Chimo mine, and then we'll add a second machine on that, and we'll drill for the rest of the year to be able to provide a decision point for our competitors or even ourselves, and then we'll be drilling on Benoit. 50,000 meters of diamond drilling, $5.2 million budget, and we have $14 million in the bank. Wilson, right by the town of Quévillon, was discovered. Well, discoveries have been in and around there since the 1930s, but basically Free West in 1993 delineated a very smallish deposit, a historical resource of about 50,000 ounces. And then the Briec scandal happened, and it was forgotten until 2002. And then in 2002, somebody might have decided to pick it up and run with it and make it popular again. Well, Canadian Malartic, Detour, Eleanor happened, and so it really didn't get any attention. And by 2012, we acquired it 100% for $42,000. When you're on the property, this is what one branch of the deposit looks like. It's about 5 meter wide shear, it's heavily mineralized, and it's got visible gold, and it's got very interesting gold values that run up to 20 grams per ton over 5 meters, and in drilling 33 grams per ton over 3 meters. What we found out is that this type of rock here has a very unique geophysical signature, but it is also competing with parallel shears that run across the property over 800 meters wide. And so this outcrop here on this slide is that star. And we're seeing that type of rock all the way out here to the east, over 2 kilometer distance. And the reason I say it's an 800 meter wide potential corridor is that you have these 5 meter wide bands that are heavily mineralized and that can be detected by geophysics. Yet, you've got a number of them striking across, or across 800 meters. And so they're providing us with a very diffuse, broad signature. That's the bad news. The good news is that we know that we're going to have these mineralized shears over 800 meters wide, but the geophysics is not going to help us to pinpoint the targets, and we're just going to have to be drilled. We're just going to have to drill. The inset picture that you can see here, you could actually see a grain of gold, and the mineralization that's providing the geophysical signature is this stuff over here. Back up there. So we're drilling right now only on this part of the system, and we're hoping that what we learn here will be able to come back and apply for a much larger drill program. And so by drilling at depth here, there, right under the deposit, we've plugged 18 holes, 7,000 meters, and in doing so, we've had to back up the drills to the north, and we've recently discovered the new zones to the north. So not only have we demonstrated that we can build ounces at depth, we could build ounces laterally, but we could also build them north and south of this shear, which adds tremendous potential to the project. The Benoit project. That is actually when Agnico Eagle started to look at us. This project, again, was discovered in 1993. And from 1993 to 1997 was drilled aggressively. 72 holes, 24,000 meters. And basically what it is a stringer zone, a VMS stringer zone that grades in copper, silver, and gold. It's situated between Nyrstar's Langlois mine and the Bachelor mine right here, right in the middle, so it has access to tailings ponds and milling facilities. And this is what the deposit looks like. This is the historical estimate of about 100,000 ounces. We had no interest in re-drilling that estimate, and so we drilled 700 meters below it to basically demonstrate that the system continues. And these are the type of grades that you're getting, 5 to 6 grams over 54 meters. This is extremely wide, and it provides a geophysical signature that is unique. Not only is that geophysical unique, but we have a lot of data on this that really constrains the signature of the deposit. And in 2015, after we had done holes down here at 700 meters, there's a geophysical crew in Val d'Or that came up with a technology that can actually read down to 500 meters. Now follow me with this next slide. So here's the deposit that you saw on the previous slide. Here is the drilling that we conducted in 2014. And in hindsight, we now know that we drilled the weakest part of the anomaly. When the results came out for the geophysics, we said, well, geez, if this is a sizable deposit, then what are these things? All right? And that's what Agnico saw in 2013. And it was, for them, it was highly reminiscent of the LaRonde mining camp. If you come to our table in a while, I'll show you evidence of that. And so finally, I'd like to end with the Chimo mine. The Chimo mine is a project that we acquired from a bankruptcy sale. In 2012, when the markets tanked, we actually sent a letter out to some auditing firms, and we said, look, if you have to deal in bankruptcy filings and stuff and you want to sell some of these assets, we have $4 million, we're ready to buy them. And so in May of 2013, we got a letter inviting us to the auction process. And the auction process included a 30-day deadline, which effectively disqualified the senior mining companies from bidding on these things because they like to do 90-day audits, due diligence on the environment. We had done the geological audit and environmental audit, and so we were ready to put a bid. And so our only competition were the other juniors, and so all we had to do was look at the financial statements of these juniors, which had much less cash than we did. We put in an offer, and believe it or not, we bought this past-producing mine for $261,000. That's less than the price of a house in Val d'Or. Now, I want you to keep in mind as I walk through the slides that when this mine shut down in 1997, it did not shut down for lack of ore, right? The producer at the time had delineated some extra ore to be mined. It shut down in 1997 because the price of gold was at $275 US. So we've got a project that we paid $261,000, and here's the upside potential. It sits on the eastern end of the Cadillac Fault, and as you can see, production was halted at 870 meters, and yet we know there's more stuff down below it and to the lateral. And you can see the other mines on the Cadillac Fault that go down way past a kilometer. LaRonde goes down to 3 kilometers. So that's potential number one. Potential number two is that it lies just within a 50-kilometer radius of 4 other gold-producing mills and a number of other mines. So it has access to infrastructure, qualified workforce, and a place to send your ore. If we look at the project at a smaller scale, bird's eye view, you can see these squares are 100-meter squares. There's the shaft, all right? In black is the zones that have been mined out, so the gold's no longer there. In red are the zones that are actually being partially delineated, all right, or discovered for future interest. The next slide is going to be a slice through this. We're going to be looking from Eric towards here. There you go. Let me walk you through this. The original mine in the 1960s was this vein right here. They were mining very thin widths, 1 to 2 ounce material, so very rich, high-grade stuff. The mine shut down in the mid-60s, and then another company came in and mined this part up until the 80s. And as they were mining this, they were drilling to the south, and then they discovered a new vein here. So that's what we're going to call the second mine. And it basically, they sold the project to Cartier for $6 million. And what they did was they basically sold an exploration project. Cartier, which is now IAMGOLD, came in and mined at depth. And they explored to the south and discovered another shear. But what they discovered when they were mining at depth is that the vein actually goes from the north, the south boundary of the shear, and when it goes at depth, it just flares out in horsetails until it transfers to the northern boundary of the shear. But what is special about this project is that not only is the gold contained in these veins, but the material between the veins is not zero grade, because you go from veins to stockwork veins to disseminated ore. And that material between the veins actually runs sometimes between 1 and 3 grams per ton. And actually, Cartier, towards the end of the mine, were mining several of these veins through very wide stopes. They were reaching up to 30 and 40 meters. They were actually precursors to bulk mining underground here. So obviously, after we acquired the project, there was a whole bunch of visits from a whole bunch of senior mining companies, and they've been looking at the data. There's 4,000 drill holes, 60,000 assays on this thing, all right? And so when we took the project, we're very conservative. We were using basically a 5-gram shell or a 5-gram cutoff. Our recent strategic investor, Agnico Eagle, said, well, look, we're looking at this from a bulk mining perspective, because at Goldex, they're mining 1.65 grams per ton underground to a depth of 1 kilometer. So by virtue of that, we sat down with them, had a brainstorming session, and we came up with an entirely new drilling plan or exploration program for this project. So instead of drilling simply a plywood sheet, when you apply a 2-gram cutoff to this thing, it becomes sort of a huge volume. So instead of throwing a ball at a barn door, so to speak, you're actually trying to just throw the ball so it crosses the barn. So you're crossing a volume of rock, and potentially you're creating a lot more ounces. The next slide I'm going to show you is a slice through the 5B zone, and we're looking from south to north. There you go. There's the mine, there's the shaft that goes down to 920. It's currently flooded, and it could potentially be dewatered down and to re-access it. The black stuff is the ore that was mined out. The red and yellow is the ore or the reserves that the previous mining company had actually delineated before they forced the mine closure. And the second thing that they did is they explored to the east, and they discovered 2 new vein fields, one here and one here. And those are the discoveries in 1996. We drilled at Christmas, just at the time Agnico invested, and we demonstrated that these veins do continue at depth. So the exploration program this year on Chimo will be to drill 24 to 25,000 meters. There's actually going to be 44 holes, yet those 44 holes will intersect 278 separate intersections. Why? Well, because we're going to be drilling from north to south, and we're going to be sweeping multiple zones with 1 hole. So again, 44 holes will produce a stream of potential results on this thing. It is necessary for us to do aggressive drilling on this project to set it up for a decision point by the end of the year. And likewise, we'll be doing that on Wilson and Benoit. So the catalyst for you to consider Cartier is that we've embarked on an aggressive exploration program. We're going to be drilling more holes or diamond drill holes this year than we've done in the past 10 years since we've been listed. And although the delays at the labs are extremely long these days in the Abitibi, once we start to get results from Wilson, then everything should follow suit, and it's going to be basically a press release festival until the end of the year. So I hope you put us on your radar. Thank you.